Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our look at A1, the terrific anthology comic from the 90s, published by Atomica Press. We're up to number 5 here, and what a way to start off. Look at this beautiful William Stout cover. He's one of my favorite cartoons of all time. I just love his style. It's just so perfect. This is just a great, fun cover. Very nice. We have the credit page again. And man, I gotta say, these indicia are getting even funnier. They're like, this is hilarious, this thing. I was laughing out loud. So if you ever get this anthology, don't forget to read all of this. Usually, I like when magazines or comics do this, where they give you a little extra content. And the indicia kind of hide things in there like Easter eggs. Contents page. And we start off with, the contents page says it's called Cover Story, but I don't know if this is just an untitled story that, because it involves the cover art by William Stout, as we shall see, it's called Cover Story. So I don't know. But the important thing is it's written by Neil Gaiman and drawn by Kelley Jones. I don't know if this is after they collaborated on Sandman. It could be right while they're working together on Sandman. I don't know. But they're a great team. Fucking love Kelley Jones's art. Just, he's basically kind of like the heir apparent to Bernie Wrightson. And he's great. So I really like the story. It could be just a personal thing. This isn't like the best story ever by any means. But it's an alternate history story, and I'm such a sucker for those. Ever since I was a little kid, those what-if stories. And this takes place in a world that is very much like ours, but also very different. It's another dimension, basically. And the narrator here, the protagonist, he's basically watching TV. And we find out that there's a world war brewing in Afghanistan. Apparently, it's a political football between the Persian Empire and the Indian Socialist Republics. And I just love stuff like this, just giving us little tidbits about this alternate world. He talks about the anarchist states, their alliance, and I'm just such a nerd for that stuff. He keeps mentioning President Page. So, I guess President Page is probably going to send in troops to Afghanistan. So, it doesn't look good. It looks like we're heading to a giant war. Or they're heading to a giant war. There's the TV, which, if you've noticed, the TV's totally circular. Just different. Everything's a little different in this world. They cut away to the free city of Manhattan for the Nobel Prize ceremonies. I love this little nerdy bit here. The narrator says, I've been looking forward to these ceremonies. Melinda Gebbie and Doris Sato were sharing the Nobel Prize for Graphlet. And also, this is such a kind of dumb joke, but also kind of brilliant to me. In the early 70s, Marlon Brando refused his Academy Award. He didn't even show up. Instead, he sent this Native American woman to basically get up on the podium and, basically say Marlon Brando's not coming in protest to the way that the American government has treated the Native Americans in this country. So in this world, the Sioux physicist Mushroom Cloud doesn't turn up. Instead, she sends an elderly actor to refuse her reward as a protest against the way the Cinefolk have been treated in the California reorganization, which is so dopey, but also I want to read that story really badly. God, look at this Kelley Jones art. This guy's so good. So this guy's got a boss named Churchill. I don't know if it's supposed to be Winston Churchill. He'd be very old. It seems like the ages in this, it takes place in 1990, And sometimes the years don't really match up. There's characters who would be 90 by now or 120, but they're still alive. So, everything's a little different. So he's talking to his boss, Churchill, and they're like, we got to find this woman. So they basically fake a competition. They put an ad in the newspaper. If this is you, you've won $1,000. In this world, $1,000 is a lot of money. That's like winning $20 million. And so it works. I love this little touch here too. Her name was Dina Hauser. She lived in Roanoke City. So in this world, Roanoke wasn't a doomed, failed settlement. It went on to become a major American city. Neil Gaiman's a clever lad. So our protagonist goes to Dina's house to tell her that she won the money, but then he basically reveals his real reason to be there, and he pulls out this like zap gun. He says, I want to show you something. And he shows her these old pulp magazines. And she's on every one. She's the model. Look, see, that's the William Stout cover. That's why this is called Cover Story, or they just named it that in the contents. But I assume these are Kelly Jones. It looks so different. It looks like he's trying to ape like a, 40s style more. But whoever did these, I'm pretty sure it's Kelly Jones. They look great. But not as good as William Stout, of course. Lurid Jungle Stories. It's a great title. Everything's a little different, too. This story is written by Brad Rayberry. I wanted to point out, too, Kelly Jones, why he's so good, and I've read interviews with him. He's just always trying stuff. He's nailed it. People like his style. He's a very popular artist. But he's always just like, I'm bored of this panel. I'm going to try this kind of weird little shading here. Every panel's a little different. He's trying out stuff. I haven't read him in the past, 10 years. So maybe he stopped. Maybe he got calcified. But even when his style was awesome and really developed, he would always throw things in, like where he was just kind of trying out stuff. This one might be a little too experimental. This shading here, and this guy looks like he has reptile skin. Then again, maybe he was supposed to the whole time, because this is an alternate reality. I just didn't notice. I doubt it, though. But it looks cool. It looks wicked cool. So he basically tells her, hey, that's you on all those covers. And they were painted between 1922 and 1943, when you were age 20, and you look 20 now. And so then basically, she's totally confused, of course. And so he decides to explain it to her. He says, do me a favor, imagine a world almost the same as this one, a world where they need you. Because they don't have you, they're on the verge of planetary destruction. And that's why you're not aging. Because somewhere there's a world full of people waking in the night with your name on their lips, your face filling their minds. Then they forget. Maybe you'll be a politician, you'll be an artist, you'll be an inventor, but something you do will be vastly help out the world, this other world. And he zaps her with the gun, and he says, so long. So I guess it was just a dimensional teleporter, It's really interesting shading there. Very like old school Caniff type stuff. And so he gets in a taxi cab, the mission accomplished. And the taxi guy says, it looks like everything's going to be okay. We're withdrawing from Afghanistan. There's not going to be a war. And then this is like just a goofy, ironic twist. We find out that the President Page has been talking about the whole time is Betty Page. And so almost implying that Betty left our dimension for this one for the same reason that Dina had to leave. Like, without Betty Page, this world would have gone to hell in a handbasket. The weird thing is, though, I don't get it, is Betty Page, like, didn't disappear or anything. She's not like Amelia Earhart. She went on to be an old lady. There's interviews with her in her 90s. And, but maybe at the time, maybe in 1991, whenever this was made or whatever, 1990, maybe Betty Page was AWOL. And she only someone found out she was still alive during that time. Man, look how Corbin that looks. That's a great panel. Overall, though, it's just a weird, odd story. I really like it, though. Just because, like I said, I'm a sucker for alternate history stuff. Here we have Chapter 5 of Bricktop, written by Chris Smith and Glenn Fabry, drawn by Glenn Fabry. And once again, just a lot of zaniness continuing. They meet this reporter, this photographer / reporter. He looks just like Peter Parker. They even call him that later on. Man, just such a good artist, Glenn Fabry. That looks like great Johnny Romita. He really captures that Peter Parker look. And so, like I said last time, guys, I'm sorry. I'm kind of lost in this comic. I kind of don't care. It's just, but I do like these weird monster types chasing them around now. So they're on the run from these weird monster types. We see that guy who, Barney the Beaver from episode 2. And I guess he's like some kind of wacky Christian guy. Like Christian psycho. So most of the Bricktop characters are a little group of friends. They dress up in these furry outfits, and they're going to blow up all these fireworks outside of where those weird creatures who were chasing them around are hanging out in. I guess they're part of this whole weird Christian church thing. God, the art's so nice. Fabry's really good. And I guess the guys come running out and they drive away, our heroes. I'm sorry, guys. It's just so not into this series, the writing of it. This is a really interesting story. In the Penal Colony by Franz Kafka, adapted by Peter Milligan and drawn by Brett Ewins. And this is like a very loose adaptation, a very interesting adaptation. I've never seen anyone quite do this, where he's talking about the narrator here in these captions is talking about the trial, but it's Peter Milligan talking about how he first read the trial as a teenager and how he was haunted by this tale. And so basically it's him commenting on the story the whole time. Almost like you were in a bar with him and he was just like, oh yeah, have you ever read In the Penal Colony? Let me lay it down for you. So he's telling you the plot of the story and Brett Ewins is drawing it, but the whole time the captions are Peter Milligan, the writer, talking about how it influenced him and how it impacted him. And Kafka in general. So it's like one of those things like, I don't know, like Samuel Beckett or something, the story. It's very like some avant-garde play where there's a penal colony and this tourist comes to visit. Man, I love Brett Ewins' art. I think he died young. I think he's not with us anymore. But I just always loved his stuff. Kind of reminds me of Steve Dillon, if Steve Dillon was way better. No offense. I like Steve Dillon okay. Wouldn't say he's the greatest artist, but he's a good storyteller. He's perfunctory for a lot of great comics, but I love Brett Ewins stuff. And so he meets this guy here, the officer, and he keeps talking about this apparatus he's created. He's just bragging about it, and he really wants to show it off to this guy. I'm sorry, not the tourist, he's the explorer, I should say. And the only other people there are the condemned man and the guard. the man in charge of guarding him. So he sets up the apparatus, apparently, which was designed by the old commandant. He keeps talking about the old commandant and the new commandant. And here's the device. Some kind of torture device. The person lies there. There's a lot of cotton there to soak up the blood, and these spikes come down. Very interesting. And the whole time, Peter Milligan's stepping outside the story to talk about Franz Kafka. That's a very Brett Ewins dude. He's drawn that guy a lot. So then finally it comes time to put the condemned man in and test out the apparatus. They strip him down. The guard strips him down and they put him in. And it's weird because this apparatus doesn't just like, I guess it looks like a torture device, but somehow it's supposed to give you enlightenment. Don't quite get it. But I mean, I don't know if you're supposed to get it. And he asks the explorer, he says, please report that you've seen the execution and that you were satisfied. And the explorer says, I can't do that. I'm not impressed with this. I have to tell the new commandant about my sentiments, my honest opinion. And the officer just is crestfallen. And he says, oh, really? Well, fine. You're free. And I basically just doesn't even want to go through with the execution. He sets the prisoner free. And it's so interesting how Milligan the whole time keeps talking about how the condemned man is not to be pitied. He's like just a stupid wretch where you don't really care if he lives or dies. At least he doesn't. And so then the officer takes off all of his clothes and gets in the apparatus, the harrow. And the condemned man is making a pest of himself. And the explorer orders him to leave, but the guy says, please let me stay. This is so interesting. So as the spikes get closer to the officer, they find out that there is no enlightenment. This is no exquisite torture, no wondrous enlightenment. This is plain murder. So the explorer tries to pull the officer from the apparatus, and he can see in his face that the officer knows, he got gypped. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that word anymore. I forget sometimes. He was tricked. There's no enlightenment, no redemption. So it's just this very bleak lesson. And there's almost like this epilogue, which the narrator, Peter Milligan, says, the story should have ended there. I don't even understand why Kafka put this in. Excuse me. It's almost like the old commandant is supposed to be a metaphor for like the Old Testament God. The wrathful, angry God. And he talks about how, the core of the story is that it means nothing. To transcend meaning, it transcends meaning, as some French man said. He also talks about how Franz Kafka lived. He probably would have been one of the millions of Jews driven into a concentration camp and killed. He died before the Nazis rose to power. And Peter Milligan wonders, what would miserable, ill Franz, what would he have made of that world? He was sad enough without the Nazis. So here's a twofer. We got Tales from the Shock Monkey, written by Shaky Kane and drawn by Brett Ewins. Ewins? I feel like Lawrence Orvach again. Ewins? This is just a very silly story. It's almost like a parody of some like goofy American comics group, sci-fi, short. And this guy goes into this doctor's office. He says, he's talking about flying saucers, ranting. And the doctor says, they're only in your mind. These UFOs are only in your mind. It's like Brett Ewins is trying to get a little like 50s Kirby there in his art. He says, can't you hear the signal's getting louder? And his head transmogrifies into this giant flying saucer. It's almost like it comes out of his head because it looks like his head is obliterated. And then this weird shock monkey narrator just says, it's all in the mind. Like the shrink said, pity about the carpet. There's some good stuff. I really like Shaky Kane. He's such a great artist. But Brett Ewins does a pretty good job. This has the kind of anarchic craziness of Shaky Kane's art, but not nearly as crazy. Oh, guys, this is such a treat. Look at this. A new tour story by Joe Kubert. This is called Food Chain. Look how this art is amazing, exquisite. This is some of the best Joe Kubert art I've ever seen. And this is 1990. Just what a coup for A1. I mean, that's why I love this this anthology so much. Like, they obviously know all the popular young artists and writers, but they definitely have this love of comics history where they can be like, yeah, we're going to go call up Joe Kubert and get him to do a new tour story. Tour was the 50s comic that Joe Kubert wrote and drew and published under his own company. And he's just a caveman. They're kind of, fun stories about Neolithic times. God, this is good stuff. This is basically just, we see these little bugs. They get eaten by a fish. The fish gets eaten by this giant fish dinosaur. I can't remember what those are called, like Ichthyoplocus or something. I said that so bad. Look at this. This is some great Joe Kubert work. Really tight for him. I mean, this is way tighter than his 70s stuff, doing Tarzan and stuff. I guess he didn't have as much of a deadline for this. They probably said, take your time, Joe. It's only a few pages. The composition there. Amazing. And basically this giant fish dinosaur attacks Tor. Tor defeats him, kills him with his spear, and then chops off some of his meat, leaves the rest behind. And those very same bugs from the beginning, well, different bugs, but same species, now they feast on the giant fish dinosaur. So that's the food chain. This is really interesting. Not that it's nearly as impactful to me, because I never read Jeff Hawke, but I know that Jeff Hawke was one of the most popular newspaper strips in England, who was there, Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon, and it was created by Sidney Jordan. So Sidney Jordan wrote this new Jeff Hawke story, got Trevor Gorridge to pencil it, and Fayed Rich to ink it. These are 2000 AD guys. But they've done some stuff for American stuff. I looked up Trevor Gorridge. He did stuff for like Creepy and Eerie back in like the late 70s, I think. And this is a kind of like a very 70s like sci-fi story where we see these super advanced aliens. That's all the captions are them communicating with each other. Well, not these first ones. I meant to say these ones here. These two highly developed aliens basically take over Jeff Hawke's mind and have him get in a little spaceship and come to see them. They're mentally commanding him. And we realize that they're very advanced. They look at the human species as very unadvanced. They know about how warlike we are. And so they're basically planning on, dissecting him. But before they do a mental probe. Kind of sift through his memories. Some pretty nice art here. Very nice art. And we see Jeff Hawke in one of his memories. He's back on Earth. And he's in France, driving around. And he sees this kind of homeless-looking guy who's got this weird device in his hands. And he doesn't think much of it. He's just like, that's weird. And he goes in this church that was basically built by this crazy priest who the rumor is that he was a demon worshiper. So there's weird gargoyles in the church. And when he goes into this to talk to the caretaker of the church, this old woman who seems really like a grandma, really sweet. But then he looks down and she's got this, what looks like a moth pinned down on her desk. She's like, oh yeah, I collect bugs. I'll use the killing jar when I go home, even though that's hours away. So he just actually sees her for what she really is, this demon. Because that's pretty sadistic, And when he takes the pin out, he rescues the bug. It looks like this. It's actually this weird little spaceship. Just like the guy outside, the homeless guy had that thing. That was too. And so the two superior beings basically say, we can't kill this guy. Because I guess these superior beings are allies of these little tiny bug people. So they free him. And they say, just like he showed mercy to that, what he thought was a bug, can we do no less? We're going to show him mercy. And then he leaves with the message, know you human, that in the depths of space are not so cold and empty after all. Basically saying we'll be waiting for you out there in the stars when you guys are ready. I've definitely read that line before in a sci-fi story. But, yeah, kind of interesting. Nice art. Here we got Knuckles, the malevolent nun in The Doom That Loomed Like a Coyote. And this is written by Cornelia Stone, but the real star of this piece is Roger Langridge, the Australian cartoonist. Love his stuff. So tight. Just great tight cartooning. And it's a pretty fun story where we see all these cameos here. There's Tintin's buddy. And Knuckles comes into this bar and sees, basically it's Wile E. Coyote. Of course they changed his name a little. And the nun is giving him shit. Basically like, you're such a fucking loser. You let that damn Roadrunner, screw you over every time. You're pathetic. And it's weird because in this story, Wile E. Coyote is like this total, humanitarian, talking about the power structures of the world are poisoning everything. I really like the design of Knuckles. I like how her nose goes up and down when she tilts her head. This big floppy nose. And Knuckles says, I can't believe what you're talking about. Why would people do this? Where would they live if Earth was, stuffed, is the term she uses. And I don't quite get this ending. We pull back from the row of houses that the bar is part of, and we see a missile coming out of a silo. And then we just see the Earth with a lot of space junk floating around it. And she's buying the Stairway to Heaven. Led Zepp played forwards. So, I don't know. But I just really like seeing Roger Langridge's cartooning. So here we have Ed Hillier, who goes by the name Ilya. And this is part of his Bic comics. He did a lot of mini comics about Bic. And these are basically just like, nice indie comics about this young guy, Bic, partying with his friends, having sex, and whatever. This one's called Party Piece. And this woman, it's her house. She's hosting a birthday party for a friend. And her name's Charlotte. And she's pretty drunk. She makes this nasty birthday cake with toothpaste icing. And she catches Bic's eye and basically says, come on up to my room. She's gonna give him candy. And they go in her bedroom, and that's where all the coats are. So they get down and they have sex. But before they have sex, she mentions that her boyfriend's downstairs. I have to be careful. So I just want to say, I always kind of liked Ed Hillier. It's a very simple, clean style. It's kind of perfect for what he's doing, for like indie comic type stuff. And of course, everyone's banging on the door eventually because they need their coats. They got to go. But they also realize that they're having sex in there. So of course, people are like listening in and going, "Ooh, what's going on in there?" So finally, she just throws all the coats out in a flurry just so she can finish up. And eventually they're done. They come back down to the party, and we see Charlotte's boyfriend. He's this big, dumb ox, basically. He looks like a big, dumb ox. And I guess the boyfriend passes out, so Charlotte sees Bic. And the party's almost over. And they start making out again. Oh, they do more than make out again. And then basically she says, yeah, we got to get this over with before he wakes up so I can tell him it's all over. So I've never read any more of these, so I don't know if they become a couple after she dumps her boyfriend. Oh my God, Jeffrey Catherine Jones does a new story, Reasons. And this is just a very kind of quirky, almost like a poem, a prose poem. It was her secret place. It was where she found her reasons. When I was 9, she showed me. And it seems to be the narrator is this little boy who was in love with this little girl. And so that was long ago. So now this guy's grown up, and he's walking in those same woods where he walked with that little girl. This is great stuff. Just these silent panels of just nature. So he goes back to that place, and he expects to see the little girl almost. And that afternoon we had reasons. So I think he's imagining her. I don't think she's really there, this little girl. Man, this is such a good one. The art, at the very least. The Boy Who Defied Gravity by Nick Abadzis. And God, look at this cityscape here. It's this fantastical city with all these different crazy architectural styles from, some are just made up, but some look like, from different cultures and history. This alone is just so great. I love that. I love that logo too, by the way. So we're introduced to this boy who realizes that he can defy gravity. Well, first it just happens. But then he realizes through his willpower, he can do it more and more. He kind of becomes this celebrity. And these scientists poke and prod him. And they just couldn't really figure out what his secret was. But he told them, he's like, guys, it's just willpower. Nobody liked that answer. It was boring, so his celebrity faded. I love all these faces he draws in the background, all so interesting and different. It's full, this comic is full of them, and they're so good. A lot of these people really remind me of Danny Hellman, Dirty Danny. He has a very similar style sometimes, but then again, he changes the style all the time. Like, look at this guy. It's like a totally different cartoonist drawing that guy than this woman. But look at this parade of freakish, interesting-looking characters. Oh, there's an amazing panel right here. Look at this. Almost like Fiona Smith territory there. And basically the boy who defies gravity is commenting on just the worst of society. God, another great panel. We see him fly past his neighbor's windows. All these crazy things are going on in everyone's apartment. We see the back of Tintin's head there. It looks like it's crazy stuff. I gotta get more Nick Abadzis in my collection. You know, we've looked at him on the channel before. He did that story with Alan Moore at one point. Well, I think he did a story with Alan Moore. Maybe I'm confused, but he's been in some of the anthologies from Britain, and I've never seen him. He's never impressed me this much. I really love this drawing. I've even seen some like Chester Brown in here, and this sparseness. Oh, good stuff. Basically, at the end of the story, the guy just takes off all his clothes and just leaves Earth. He goes all the way. This one's a great one. Take one capsule every million years. This is almost like a story that maybe was slated for Alien Worlds. And because it's a story by Bruce Jones. Pencils by Jim Sullivan. Inks by William Stout. Then again, maybe this was in Alien Worlds and I forgot. And they reprinted it in here. But I think this is new. I'm trying to see if there's a copyright date. I couldn't find out on the internet. This is some really sharp art. No offense to Jim Sullivan, but I'm pretty sure it's because of the William Stout inks. But I've seen Jim Sullivan before. He's pretty good. Obviously influenced by the sci-fi EC artists like Al Williamson and Roy Krenkel, guys like that. He obviously likes them. Look at all this great EC type machinery. So basically these guys have built their own time machine. And this older guy, he apparently he's got an axe to grind. There's this guy named Chatworth, who's like the greatest explorer of all time. He found the Loch Ness Monster. And we'll see more clippings of him later. He's basically just done all these. He's got these amazing feathers in his cap. And this guy's very jealous, basically. So he's like, I'm going to go back in time. And I'm going to get a dinosaur. And of course, it gives these guys an excuse to draw these really well-drawn, well-illustrated dinosaurs. We see another clipping. Chatworth discovers the dodo, the extinct dodo. And then all of a sudden, they start feeling funny. And their black hair is growing on their arms. Their fingers are getting all stubby. And they're growing out of their shirts. And basically, it doesn't really make any scientific sense. They're reverting to cavemen, to Neanderthals. Because something in the air because they went back through time. I don't know. God, look at that Triceratops there. That's great. So they're basically trying to get back to the ship. They're like, we got to get out of here. We're going to, totally turn. and this Triceratops is blocking their way. The younger guy tries to take a photo of it. He can't resist, even though he's right in the path of I almost said the rhino, the Triceratops charge. And he totally gets trampled to death by the Triceratops. The older guy is just about to be killed, but then a T-Rex comes out of nowhere and attacks the Triceratops. So he gets to make it to the ship. All the while, he's becoming more and more primitive. Look at that beautiful tree. And he can barely work the controls. And just as his last bit of, his last bit of dexterity, he succeeds. And the time sphere is brought back to the present. And when he comes out, he's in the Himalayas and it's freezing. And he says, I guess the earth rotated during our journey, so I'm on the other side of the world. And then he says, can't think, can't talk, becoming completely primitive. Another great panel there, very Frazetta. And he passes out in the snow. And then the big joke is, New York Times article, Chatworth captures abominable snowman. So his greatest enemy now is, he's given him another feather in his cap. Here we have Elvestein in Yin and Yankee. And I've never seen this guy before. Let me get his name. Is it on the last page here? It's in the contents. Bambos Giorgio. And this is basically all the captions are Elvestein thinking to himself, And they're pretty funny, pretty well-written stuff. It's not easy being Elvestein. If it was easy, I wouldn't bother being me. I like things hard. So he's in Chinatown, and all of a sudden it looks like Bruce Lee shows up. And he's basically spouting like fortune cookie wisdom to him. And Elvestein's saying, what the hell are you talking about? So I guess they get to fighting. And all of a sudden, Bruce Lee just disappears. Yeah, I kind of like this punchy writing. It was him, the Hong Kong hooligan, the king of Kung Fu, the Jeet Kune Do kid, the martial arts mop top, the little dragon, the king boxer. And then Elvestein just walks off. It's just a little kind of funny vignette. Never heard of this guy either. Pretty good, though. Kind of see a little Mike Allred in there. But I wouldn't mind reading more of these. This is a pretty spooky story. It's The Proxy. This is a Ramsey Campbell short story, the great horror writer, and it's adapted by David Lloyd. Oh, the letters say Bambos, so it's the guy from Elvestein. And this is kind of a very subdued, low-key ghost story. To be honest, I was actually getting a little bored reading it. And this woman, this housewife, she's married to this guy, and she starts seeing visions when she opens the second story curtains. And she sees this light, this bright light. Her husband can't see it. She even asks him, she says, do you see that? It's like, what are you talking about? There's nothing there. So she knows she's seeing something that's, like some kind of apparition or something. And we just see her like very kind of sad, mundane life. Her husband has to take long road trips for his job. So she's usually lonely. Doesn't seem that happy in the first place. But now she's got this thing. She kind of finds herself terrified of this. That's what she sees when she looks out the window. So it keeps getting more and more intense. And pretty soon she starts seeing a whole house. Basically what she was first seeing was the light from a window. So now there's like this, there's a house like 2 feet away from her house. Really like this David Lloyd art. It really fits the tone of the story perfectly. It's kind of this bleak, miserable milieu this woman's living in. And eventually, the house is on fire, that imaginary house. She finds out that, she asks around, and it's not verified, but this old woman at the market said, I think there was a house there. It burned down, and we're a strange family. The child was retarded. So one day she's looking into the window, I guess this is before the house went on fire, and she sees in the bed, it almost looks like a giant fetus. And then she sees the shadow on the wall. And then she's so distracted by this, she finally realizes that she heard this wrenching metallic sound that she pretty much ignored. It was just in the back of her head. And she runs outside, and her husband was in a car wreck, and he's dead. So a very subtle, not that horrific horror story. But I just like the mood it sets, and it's almost like just a character study of this woman. A lot of it is just talking about her, and she's kind of stuck in this malaise. Here we have Tripto the Acid Dog, co-written by Bill Mumy and Miguel Ferrer, the two actors. Big comic fans. They've done a lot of stuff in comics over the years and continue to act. And drawn by Steve Lealoha, one of the great 70s cartoonists. I really like Steve Lealoha's stuff. And we see these three kids. They each have dogs. They're all playing together. They run off to go to the 7-Eleven and say, you guys behave. Tripto, you're in charge. I guess Tripto, his origin is he tried to save his family, but he was assassinated. And eternal rest was not to be his fate, though. And so now he lives on as Tripto the Acid Dog. So after the boys leave, the teens leave, this guy in a truck pulls up and grabs two of the dogs, Tripto's friends. Tripto holds back to see what's going on. And then Tripto makes his amazing transformation, turns into Tripto the Acid Dog. So cute. I love the way Lealoha draws him. He follows the truck. It goes to this horrible laboratory where they're just torturing these animals, basically. And these guys are really into it. They're like these sadistic little fuckers, Tripto breaks in. He frees all the animals. And the ones that he's too late to save, he assists them in their transition to the other side. He's almost like Tripto has these mystical powers. So all the souls of these dead critters kind of go into Tripto. And then he sheds one tear. I like this little panel sequence here. Very 70s. Look at just the chops on Lealoha, man. This looks so good. Some of these panels are amazing. Tripto breaks into the place where these guys are working because they went upstairs and are torturing these monkeys. And he kills one of the guys. And then the main guy, the boss, he unleashes all of the tortured souls of those critters, and they seek vengeance on their own. And so, with all the animals freed, Tripto gets his two buddies, and they go back to the street where they were hanging out. And their owners, of course, who were missing them, are like, "Oh, it's you guys." And then there's a quote from the president of the Humane Society. So I guess they just really wanted to push this moral, this anti-vivisectionist, treating animals badly thing. There's a story and art by Steve Dillon on this one, Kathleen's House. I don't think I've ever seen Steve Dillon write before. Not bad. This is a really kind of sad little story. I mean, not much of a story. Just a little character piece about this guy getting drunk all day in a bar because his girlfriend just moved to the States, just moved to America. and left him behind. And he's just hanging out, being a total loser, getting drunker and drunker. There's two friends of his come by, and they sit and chat with him for a while. And it just makes him feel worse. They're all talking about Kathleen. And this guy's all like, yeah, I bet she's meeting lots of nice, cool friends over there having the time of her life. And Declan, the protagonist, he doesn't want to hear it. So he goes to get some food. It's late at night. And just the sadness of this. I mean, you've probably been there once in your life. It just really captures that feeling of just like, oh man, she's gone. And he actually goes to her house late at night. And, you know, she lived with her family, so the family's still home, but her window is dark because, of course, she's not there. And he has this sad, well, it's not a sad memory, but it is now. He has a memory of hanging out with her in that room for 48 hours when the parents were away. And then we'd look up the bare mattress that she used to sleep on. There's a photo of them. Sad stuff. And I'm glad I don't do that stuff anymore. Coming attraction for A1 number 6. I'll give you a little teaser there. Tank Girl's going to be in it. The new look Tank Girl. And of course, all the other names look amazing. And here we have a back cover by William Stout showing us what he's been up to in the, you know, the late 80s and 90s. William Stout became a big proponent of Antarctica. He was, he actually painted a bunch of these 45, I believe, these beautiful oil paintings and had exhibits around the world to raise money for the fund to turn Antarctica into the first world park. It would be protected, you know, like a national park, but it would be the whole world would own it, like the UN would take care of it, I guess. He's really into that stuff. And I would love to see more of these. To be honest, I don't like this nearly as much as his, you know, this. But, you know, William Stout can draw anything he wants. So I'm sure these paintings are pretty damn good. So there you go, guys. A1 number 5. Sorry that took a while. But there's a lot of good stuff in this issue. Man, I miss these anthologies so much. I wish there was more A1. I mean, there's going to be some more. We got some other stuff coming up soon. But not enough for my liking. More A1, please. Hope you enjoyed watching today's video, and I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.